Hi there, this is Ed from thedadwhocodes. In this video, we'll be seeing how to set the date and time based on a country in PHP version 8.1. So when you display the date and time, especially in the US format, what we see is the day, and then the month, and then the day again as a number, and then the year. However, in a country such as Spain, when you display this information, what we start with is the day, and then the month, and then the year. Usually PHP has a function called string f, which I believe stands for format time, and this is usually used to convert this date and time based on the country's locale. However, in version 8.1, this function has now been deprecated. So now we need to use something called the IntlDateFormatter class in order to change the date and time based on the country's locale instead. So this is the code that we'll be looking to write and the output that we would expect. What we see here is the US time, and if we were to put in the Spanish locale instead, this is what we would see. So any prerequisites. I do recommend that you have knowledge of PHP for obvious reasons. Basic knowledge should be fine, but definitely a good knowledge of PHP. We'll be using a website called Replit. Replit is a website that allows users to build small applications directly from a web browser. I'm choosing this application just for ease of use, but you could use your own IDE. In Replit, we'll be using a Laravel template. Laravel is a PHP framework that helps you write web applications. So we'll be using the IntlDateFormatter class in order to change the date and time to a country's date and time. We'll utilize the create function in this class, and this create function helps us create a date formatter template. This template allows us to insert multiple values in order to specify exactly how we want this new date and time to look like. We will then be actually formatting our date value that we pass in to this class along with the date formatter template that we produced earlier on with the create function, and then we will output the final code for the date based on the country's locale. So here's a visual explanation of the code. We have the IntlDateFormatter class, which has a create function, which will help us create the format template. We're then going to pass this template along with the actual date value we have for the date and time. I'm going to use a Unix timestamp into this format function from the IntlDateFormatter class, and that's going to output our formatted date based on the country's locale. So here we are at the Replit website. We can create an account, but what I like to do is I like to use my GitHub account in order to log in. If you don't have a GitHub account, I do recommend you creating one. Even as a new developer, new programmer, or someone starting to learn how to code, you are going to encounter GitHub very soon, and in every aspect of your life if you proceed to become a developer, even working for yourself or as a team or for a company, so on and so forth. GitHub, Bitbucket, any version control account that you can create. So for me, I'm just going to log into GitHub quickly. And now if you go into the login on the top right hand corner, you'll see an option where you can continue with your GitHub account. And then once you do that, it will let you in and you'll be good to go. I will provide a link to the Replit, but what I need you to do is I need you to fork one of my replits called dateLocaleStart. In order to fork it, you just need to go to the name of the replit, bring down the drop down menu, click on the three buttons on the top right hand corner, and then click on the fork button. We can give this a name, so I'm just going to take off the start at the beginning and just call it test, and then click on fork replit. This might take a little bit of time, but once it's loaded, it will appear on your screen as the Laravel application. The first thing that we see is the web.php file. This is located in our roots folder, and this handles the root cause URL cause that will make the data appear in our Laravel application. Our Laravel data will appear in a view, which is located under resources, in our views, and in this index.blade.php file. If you are not familiar with PHP or Laravel in particular, the index.blade.php file is similar to a HTML file that you would find in most web applications. I'm going to save up a little bit of space by removing the sidebar here, as we won't be using the rest of it for the rest of the demonstration. So in my code, I've written comments on what we'll be doing. They start in the web.php file in our roots folder, and the first thing we'll be doing is creating the date variable. We'll then create the dateFormatter template, and then we'll format the date value with our dateFormatter template, and then we're going to pass this value to our view, which is the index file. And here we'll be creating an element. I've just chosen the h2 element, and then we're going to be passing and displaying that value that we have received from the web.php file. So we're going to go back and we're going to create a date variable. You can use the current time of PHP. I'm just going to use a Unix value that I've chosen. So I'm just going to enter in my Unix value, and I believe this should point to the 1st of August 2023 at 7:15 AM. Pacific Standard Time. Next, we're going to have to create the dateFormatter template. So I'm just going to create a variable to hold this. So dateFormatter template. And then we're going to be using a function that is built in with PHP version 8.1, which is the dateFormat create function. And then we're going to be passing in at least 5 values in order to tell PHP how we want our format template to modify the date. So the first one's going to be the locale, and this could be English US, which would be I want the date in English time based on the US system. The next one is going to be the date type, so how we want the date to be displayed. You can pass in a value that makes this date type look really long. So it could be like 1st of February 2023 at 7:15 Pacific Standard Time. You could also make it a little bit shorter, where you could maybe just have the acronym for Pacific Standard Time. You can make it even shorter, just removing that, and so on and so forth. I will go over this very quickly in a slide in a few moments. Next, we have a value for the time type, and it's going to be similar to the above. Then we're going to have the time zone that we want to enter in. So when you think of time zones, you think of GMT time, America/Los Angeles. There are many others. I believe there's also one for America/Mexico City, many more, New York, so on and so forth. It just depends on what you're looking for. The final one is called the calendar. The default is the Gregorian calendar. There is also a traditional one. These are very specific use cases. I don't regularly use these. You may come across a problem that you need to resolve based on this calendar that would suit your needs. But for now, I'm just going to be using the Gregorian calendar instead. There is a sixth value that you can pass in. It's very optional, and this will be the date pattern, so that you can just tell PHP that you want your date in a specific format. So you could say, I want it as the month, day, and then year. Or you could even say, I just want the month and year. So we're going to write this out in full. So the date the locale that I'm going to choose is English US. The date type. Now, in order to do this, we have to call the class. and I want the full date. I'm not worried about shortening it or anything like that. Again, we will go over this later on. The time type uses the same format, so what we can do is just copy and paste what we have at the top. And now we're going to enter in the time zone. We're in the US, so yes, I'm going to use the Los Angeles time. So I'm going to use America/Los Angeles. For the calendar, I'm going to use the Gregorian calendar. And again, we use the International Date Formatter class again in order to pass in the Gregorian calendar value. I'm not going to put in a date pattern because we want to see what the full version of the date and full version of the time will display. Next, we do need to format our date value based on our date format template. Now, one of the things I've just noticed now is that I've missed out the semicolon right here. So from now, we are going to need to create the formatted date. And to do so, we have to call the format function. So it's going to be similar to the create function that we have at the top, but it's going to have format instead. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be passing the template just here. And we're also going to be passing in the date value. Close off that with a semicolon. Next, we're going to be passing in the formatted date that we have here as an array to our index view. So create an array, create a string that refers to our formatted value. I'm just going to use the string date. Next, we're going to go to our index.blade file, and we're going to go to the fifth comment here, which tells us what we need to do. In my case, I just need to create a h2 element, and then I'm just going to give it an ID of date so that it uses this styling that I have up here. And then we just need to call the PHP variable that we passed to the index.blade file from the web.php file, and that is just date with a $sign. Now, I'm going to start running this quickly now. And I'm also going to minimize the consoles because we don't really need to see that. And here we have the US date shown. We're going to go back to the web.php file and we're going to change the locale. So if you need to get the Spanish version of this, then we just need to change this to the Spanish locale, which just happens to be ES _ capital E capital S. Let's just click the refresh button and you'll see that it gets changed to the Spanish. If you would like to change this to German, then you just need to choose DE and DE again, I believe. And if we refresh this, it shows up in German or Dutch. I believe it's German, Deutsch. So let me just stop this quickly. And we're going to discuss more about these values right now. So we are going to be discussing more about the create function for the International Date Formatter. And we're going to be looking into what this full value means for the date type and the time type. So there is more information to be found on this URL here. But essentially full refers to seeing the whole information for the date or time. And what you can do is you can change this full value to other values in order to show fewer information. So you could put in long, medium, short, or none. The other value that we mentioned, the sixth value that we could put in, is the date pattern as I mentioned before. So you could put in things such as MM4Ys in order to put in the month and the year, or you could have it in a format where you start the year first, the month and date, and so on and so forth. This can be found in PHP documentations as well. So if we can just look back at the code again. So here we have our code again. let's change the date type now. So again, this class is basically giving us the date type to this create function. And now we're just going to change this from full to long. And again, this is going to change the date. So what we should see is that this Spanish for, I believe it's Monday the 1st of August, should change and be a little bit shorter. So let me just refresh this now. And you can see it's taken off the first day at the beginning. And now the international date formatter also gives us a time. So again, we're going to choose short for this one. And now if I refresh this, we should see that the time gets shortened. Possibly we're going to be losing the PST, the Pacific Standard Time at the end. So let's just hit refresh and we can see that is gone, but we still have the date. So there are many things to try on this. Feel free to try it yourself as well and see what you can change. So some final thoughts from this video. We mostly learned about how to use the international date format class, particularly the create and format functions for this class in order to change the date and time to a country's locale. We now have better understanding of locales, time zones, and date patterns in order to change the date. And there are a few things that I do recommend you do after this video, such as modifying the code yourself with different locales. I believe there are even some for Polish and Romanian. Changing the date time types to see more what happens if you put in null, what happens if you put in short for the date time, and maybe even go even further, maybe create another route that, it could say /Spanish at the end in order to produce the Spanish locale. So I hope this video is very helpful to you. Please leave some feedback for me in the comments below. I'd really appreciate it. And I hope to see you in another video next time. Take care. All the best.